Please join me in prayer. We who have so much to do seek quiet spaces to hear your voice each day. We who are anxious over many things look forward to your coming among us. Amen. December is movie month. This month and really every year. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, the Harry Potter spin-off is still out in theaters. Rogue One, the Star Wars spin-off, just came out, and it enjoys a well-deserved 90% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And there's a new Martin Scorsese film slated for release in the U.S. on December 23rd. The film is called Silence. Scorsese, as some of you I'm sure know, is an Academy Award-winning film director, named by Total Film magazine the second best film director of all time, behind Alfred Hitchcock. Scorsese's films include The Last Temptation of Christ, Goodfellas, Casino, Gangs of New York, The Departed, Wolf of Wall Street, the list goes on. Films that have collected 20 Oscars and 11 Golden Globes over the years. A few weeks ago, the New York Times Magazine did a profile on Scorsese, focusing on his new film Silence, about faith and doubt. The film is based on a novel of the same title by Shusaku Endo, who was considered for the Nobel Prize in Literature for the book. Silence is about 17th century missionaries to Japan. They gain converts, but many of the new Christians eventually renounce their faith under intense persecution. The novel and film focus on one Portuguese missionary in particular, named Sebastian Rodrigues, who is offered a grim choice by the authorities. The lives of other persecuted Christians would be spared only if he would renounce his faith. Scorsese read the novel Silence on a train in Japan in 1989 and decided then and there that he wanted to turn it into a film. When he returned home from Japan, according to the New York Times Magazine piece, he procured the film rights to the book. And as the years passed, hardly a day went by without him mentioning the project to the people around him, actors and friends, and even his old parish priest, Father Principe. But various projects prevented him from focusing on this one film that he really wanted to do. After finishing Wolf of Wall Street in 2013, Scorsese declared that Silence would be his next picture. He wouldn't commit to another until it was finished. And so 26 years in, the filming began. Earlier this month, the film was screened at the Vatican, where Scorsese met Pope Francis himself. But what caught my eye this week in the New York Times Magazine profile was not so much this particular film, though I think it's fascinating that such a celebrated director put on hold for 26 years the project he really His other films won 16 Academy Awards and 10 Golden Globes. What really caught my eye was the way Scorsese, the committed Christian, approaches his work. According to the article, the preoccupation of Scorsese's entire career has been the nature of faith. Even though his parents were not religious, as a boy in Little Italy, he always wanted to be a missionary. I trusted the church, he said, because it made sense what they preached and what they taught. I understood that there's another way to think outside the closed, hidden, frightened, tough world I grew up in. Commenting on his film The Last Temptation of Christ, which created great controversy when released, Scorsese said he wanted to give the gospel story a contemporary accent, the way great artists like Caravaggio had done, because he believed that God shouldn't be only in the hands of the churches. God, he said, should be accessible to people in the audience who feel alienated from the churches. One film critic said of Scorsese that he approaches filmmaking as a priestly avocation, a set of spiritual exercises embedded in technical problems. About his work and his faith, this famous director says, "The church and filmmaking slow me down. They allow me to meditate. They give me a different sense of time. They are a portal to the world beyond. Those words help me to reflect this week on the meaning of Advent, the season we're in as a church. To paraphrase this great director, Advent slows us down. Advent allows us to meditate. Advent gives us a different sense of time. Advent is a portal to the world beyond. Advent is about waiting and pausing and catching our breath and getting our spiritual bearings and taking time to experience wonder, even as the social world around us is totally nuts over the holidays, moving at a frenetic pace. Presents and parties and traveling and food and sundry holiday musical and theatrical productions, all demanding our time and attention, keeping us narrowly focused on schedules and calendars and everything else that needs doing now. And when all is said and done, when the parties have ended and the Christmas feast becomes leftovers, and the opened presents are stacked under the tree with the wrappings in tatters all over the floor, and the tree itself begins to lose its needles, when the Christmas sugar high leads to a New Year's crash, we may wonder in a different way where it all went. But Advent shushes all of that cultural noise and says, just wait a moment. Pause for a bit. Breathe. And bask in the wonder of this season. Maybe this is an especially timely message for us as a country. Advent 2016 concludes a calendar year that many of us would rather forget. A meme is circulating on Twitter called "Me at the beginning of 2016, me at the end of 2016." One tweet depicts the beginning of 2016 as a duckling holding a butter knife, and the end of 2016 as a raven holding a serrated blade. Another depicts the beginning of 2016 as a young, fresh-faced Leonardo DiCaprio in the film Titanic, and the end of the year as a frozen DiCaprio dressed in rags with a wild beard from the film The Revenant. And a third tweet shows the beginning of 2016 as the Statue of Liberty as it currently stands, while the end of 2016 is depicted as the statue in decayed ruin from the apocalyptic film Planet of the Apes. Back in July, Slate magazine asked whether 2016 was on pace to be the worst year in history. Slate pointed out that in order for 2016 to get that ignominious title, it would need to beat out such bad years as 1348, the year of the Black Death. 2016 would also need to beat out basically any year during World War I and World War II. 2016 would also, according to Slate, have to beat out the year 72,000 BCE, when a volcanic super eruption on the island of Sumatra left 6 inches of volcanic ash on the continent of Asia, affecting weather patterns in a way analogous to a nuclear winter, and, according to DNA testing, reduced the human population in the world to less than 10,000 people. Yes, 72,000 BCE was a bad year for us. This past Wednesday, Gia Tolentino of The New Yorker observed that Google searches for, quote, the worst year ever spike every December. We've started to say, she writes, that every year is the worst year ever, though she admits 2016 is pretty bad. 2016 felt, she writes, like a single sleepless night spent absorbing an interminable series of nightmares through my phone. There was Zika, she writes. There were terrorist attacks every few days, including the bombings in Brussels and the Bastille Day deaths in Nice. In June, 50 people were killed at a gay dance club in Orlando. In July, a single suicide bomb in Baghdad killed 292 people. David Bowie died, as did Prince, Muhammad Ali, and Leonard Cohen. On July 5th, Alton Sterling was pinned to the ground and shot at close range by policemen in Baton Rouge. On July 6th, Philando Castile was killed by police during a routine traffic stop in Minnesota. On July 7th, what had been a peaceful protest in Dallas turned into 5 police officers being killed. And then, continues Tolentino, there was the presidential election. Hate crimes have increased since then. The North Pole, a week after the election, was 36 degrees hotter than normal. Venezuela, the country, has fallen, and Aleppo is experiencing a complete meltdown of humanity. But interestingly, after this litany of bad news, Tolentino makes an Advent observation. Hope is elusive, she concludes, but it will return. Advent is the season of hope, a time, to borrow from Scorsese again, to slow us down and help us meditate, give us a different sense of time, and to open a portal into another world. Today's scripture reading from Isaiah is a story about hope. The year Isaiah wrote, the year 735 BCE, could have made a bid to be the worst year on record. Israel was in a civil war. The economy was in the tank. Economic inequality in the nation fueled religious corruption, and a foreign army had laid siege to Jerusalem and was threatening to assault the city. As the nation panicked, Isaiah began to sing. He sang a series of prophecies, poems really, songs with lyrics that urged the people to dream big, even as the year 735 kept getting worse. A year when, according to Isaiah, the hearts of the people trembled as trees of the forest sway before a wind. In one place, Isaiah sings, with lyrics we read and reread each Advent and hear sung to us in Handel's Messiah. Isaiah sings, "For a child has been born to us, a son given to us. Authority rests upon his shoulders, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace." In another place, in the early chapters of Isaiah, again with lyrics we read each Advent, Isaiah turns a dream into a song of comfort for a violence-weary nation. "The wolf shall live with the lamb," he sings. "The leopard shall lie down with the kid, the calf and the lion and the fatling together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze. Their young shall lie down together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox." And then in today's reading from Isaiah chapter 7, the prophet sings of a promised child, a miraculous child who will be born to a young woman and who would be named Emmanuel, which translated literally from Hebrew, "with us is God." I love that Isaiah, in the midst of a bad year, a year filled with bad news about violence and victimization and corruption and uncertainty, I love that Isaiah turns to art, turns to song, to poetry and lyrics, to channel that human capacity for awe and wonder, what Carl Sagan said he felt when gazing up at a night sky. Isaiah sings about hope and peace and divine light shining in the darkness, putting big dreams and extravagant promises into lyrics. Lyrics that would become the foundation of this time of year. Lyrics that focus our attention on a baby born in a stable. A baby who is, as the Celtic Christians say, the coming of hope. And a baby who opens to us, to borrow again from Scorsese, a portal into another realm. Advent and Christmas remind us, even if they arrive at the end of a rough calendar year, they remind us that God's realm comes to us, that it comes with extravagant promises, and that it's closer to us than we even realize. I want to end this morning with a story about the closeness of God's realm. I found the story in last week's UCC Daily Devotional. It's a devotional about Christmas trees by Reverend Quinn Caldwell. Caldwell writes, "You parents who want fragrant trees to shade your households with joy this time of year You go out into the tree lot, the children running with delight, you following along behind with the sled. A while later, after much deliberation, maybe an argument or two about long versus short needles, tall and skinny versus short and fat trees, after somebody has knelt in the wet snow with a saw, snow slipping off branches and down the back of their neck as they hack away at the trunk, the group comes back. And now the children that went out on foot are being dragged back in the sled, tired but happy, or maybe grumpy, as on a royal throne. Then there's the tying of the tree on the car, the setting up in a tree stand, the wrestling of boxes out of the attic, the unraveling of miles of lights. And all for what? They that put themselves through the work of such rituals do it for one reason: delight. They do it so that the children, or so that they themselves will experience a taste, just a taste of the delight that Christmas promises and portends. They do it so that they, or their children, will get good at recognizing joy when it arrives, so that they have some practice under their belts at recognizing the good and the beautiful when it shows up in their lives. We do it to call that goodness into being. It's work, no doubt about it, this practicing for God, this learning to recognize the signs of God with us. It's cold feet and frustrated grunts and blown fuses, and sometimes you're right on the edge of declaring never again. But then you turn off the house lights, plug in the tree lights, and everybody uncovers their eyes. And there it is, glory, right in your own living room. And life is full of delight, and the house is shaded with joy, and you're all just a little closer to the realm of God. Advent, a season of hope and delight and joy and awe, and of getting good at seeing the realm of God and allowing the songs of Isaiah to shape how we see the world. None of these take away from the tragedies of 2016, some of which are still ongoing. But they do, in the words of Scorsese, open a portal to another world. And isn't that what faith is all about anyway? Amen.